Clay here from Mastermind Models and Miniatures, and today I want to talk to you about Incursion America. We're going to be working on the Ratnik Soldier with minigun. It's a really cool model, and I'm excited to show you guys how to paint it. Now, if you haven't heard of Incursion America, I highly recommend you check out the link on this video. Go there, check out all the cool models, all the work they've been doing on this game. Now, this game is going to be kickstarting very soon, so I'd keep an eye out for that. But for now, enjoy this painting tutorial that we've put together for you. Alrighty guys, we're at the bench. We got our Ratnik Soldier with a big old minigun here. So the first thing we're going to do is get this guy primed up so we can start painting. So for that, I'm going to use my Duplicolor Sandable Auto Primer. I recommend this. You can find it at auto parts stores just about anywhere. We're going to use the white with that because it's going to be easier to coat over whites when we're painting. So give it a good shake. I'm going to move some models out of the background here because we're going to spray where you guys can see it. And then make sure we're spraying well. And then just quick passes over this guy. Staying fairly close. I don't want to back up too much. I'm about this far away when I'm spraying. And that's all we need. We don't need a solid coat of white. We just need to get some primer on there, make sure our paint's going to stick. And then once that's dry, we'll head on to the next step. Alright, our primer's dry. We're ready to paint. And the first color we're going to start out with is this Russian green from the Vallejo Model Air line. I've already got some of it on my palette over here. So I'm going to grab that. And since we're coating over white, it's going to be a lot easier to get it on there. Now, when we're doing this layer, I'm not too worried about sticking in the lines. We're going to go over some of these areas with other colors, and they coat pretty well, so I'm not super concerned about that starting out. I'm not going to try and waste paint and waste time by coating areas that don't need to be coated, but just going to make sure I get a good green on the areas that we're going to put our wash over. Now we're using the Russian green, pretty standard color for Russian soldiers and their uniforms. We're going to be working on this. We got to remember that this is a kind of a near future game, so the color schemes are going to be a little bit different. There's some room for creativity in this. But the models are detailed enough that we can use some techniques, like dry brush wash, in order to get the details to pop out for us on these soldiers. Again, just roughing it in. I'm just using older Vallejo Series 7 tips. Not as good as it used to be, but still good for base coat and still getting paint where I want it without having that ultra fine tip that the newer brushes will have. Getting in here under these little armor plates. Don't need to miss this whole entire arm. And again, not worried about hitting his little exoskeleton here because he's got all the Ratnik soldiers have this exoskeleton that it's kind of a thing that might be coming up in the real world. So it's in the game and it's in the character models. I know they kind of exist, but they're tethered, and these guys, they don't have to have that tether in order to move around in that exoskeleton. Battery technology has evolved in the near future, especially with these big old mechs that are walking around in the game. If you guys haven't seen any of the mechs yet, I suggest heading over to the website, checking it out. We got a bulldog that we've fully painted up for the game. Spent a considerable amount of time on him, so it's done to a much higher standard. These are gameplay models, so we're going to make sure that we get them up and ready and done for the table. So there's our green. Again, we're going to let that dry before we put our wash on. We don't want to mix paint on the model with the wash. So when that's dry, we'll get right back. Alright, we're back. The green is dry. Now we're going to add a wash, and for that we're going to use this Athonian Camo Shade. I'm pretty sure that's how you say that. Maybe not. I'm not sure. It's made up anyway. So let's shake it up, get it ready to apply this. I'm going to be using my number 2 liner here. Simply Simmons. I want to wet this brush before I start applying my wash, just because all that wash is going to soak up through the brush, and I don't want to get too much pigment up near the ferrule of the brush, because then we'll reduce the lifespan. They're not going to last forever anyway, but I'd rather them last a little bit longer. Here we go, just slopping on this wash. Don't have to be careful about it. And what the liner does for us is it acts kind of like a fountain pen. Loads up the whole brush. And then it just kind of slowly unloads back onto the model as we're distributing our pigment over our Russian green. And again, I'm being pretty liberal with it, getting it on there. Making sure I'm hitting any areas that may be showing clothes. I might go back and trim those later, but for now, while I got the paints out and while I'm doing that step, it's better to just get it on there, get it done, even if we're going to cover it up later. Let's see, I got to get the arm here. Back of the arm, back of the neck. You can see all those little folds that are in the clothing of this guy. Get down some of the cracks and crevices there where he's holding the gun. Make sure I don't miss the top of the leg. And see, this step is also going to help get any of those little crevices you didn't get in with the brush, and that's fine. Because when that paint pulls up in there, it's going to give you a nice dark green anyway. There we go. Got them. Ready? And when that's dry, we'll move on to the next step. Alright, we're back, and the camo shade is dry. The camera is fighting me as always. But now we got all these folds kind of popped out, looking good. We're going to move on. We're going to use the khaki to do the knee pads, and then he's got a few little bags here and there and a little belt that runs around the back. You can see the pack on the side here and the pack over here. Shake that up, add it to my palette. And again, grab this older Winsor Newton, just go straight into the paint off the palette. We're looking for coverage. Looking for quick and easy. I'm going to grab this knee pad here. This is where I want to be a little bit more careful and make sure that I'm not going outside the bounds of the shape. Following the whole object around. I might need one more slight coat on that. I'm going to go ahead and hit the other knee pad. Slow and careful on that. This should be dry enough to just hit real quick. Make sure we got a good solid coat on that. We'll come back and hit this knee pad after we get these packs up here. So, right here we got a little bitty satchel strapped to the side. We got a few more little magazine shaped packs here. Now, I've never been in the military, but I know these military guys got to carry a lot of stuff. They need all these little satchels. Paint around this. You see his knife right here? We're going to paint around that because this strap kind of goes under that. His knife is hooked up to his exoskeleton here. Here, there's a little pack that on there. Just searching for any other spots I might need to hit. Let's grab this knee pad again real quick. Make sure it's nice and solid. The khaki color from Vallejo, it coats pretty well, so I'm not super worried. Looks like this belt kind of comes to each side, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. There we go. Making sure, double checking we got all the areas we want, and then we go ahead. That's already pretty dry. That brown dries really quick, the khaki. So we're going to go ahead, move to the next step. We're going to use our Earthshade, very popular wash when doing quick models for the tabletop. Again, grab our liner, make sure we put some water in it so it's not going to soak up all this wash to the ferrule. And then again, pretty heavy load on here because we can always pull some off if we need to. See, if you get too much on there, just unload your brush on the paper towel. You know, pull some of it off. Get it to the shade you want. There we go. Look kind of dirty. And reload. Let's head up here to the belt and little satchels. Being a little more careful on this step. I don't want to get too much brown on the our green clothing, but it's okay if it rolls over the edge a little bit because it's gonna give us our shadow. Make sure you get some wash in those cracks between the little satchels here. Make sure we can darken it up so we can see the shape. Add a little bit more down here toward the bottom. I'll go around the edge of my knee pad. That is black paint. That is not wash. Wash is up here. I want the knee pads to look a little bit mottled, like he's knelt down in some dirt or something. So as that wash is kind of halfway dry, I can go in and just sort of tap it a few times, make those knee pads look pretty dirty. Alright. Now, again, don't have to wait for that to dry because we're going to move on to a different area of the model. And for that, we're going to grab our cold gray Vallejo game color. Give it a good shake. I have some over here, but it might be a little bit dry. I was painting earlier. Grab my size 0. And then I'm going to start at the boots, and I'm going to paint the whole boot. So this color is pretty close to our primer color. I'm making sure get all the way around the boot, because the boot has the exoskeleton linked into it. And again, for tabletop, if it was a higher level paint job, we might differentiate between the boot and the exoskeleton. But for getting these guys done, getting them on the field, we'll just go ahead and put them in, because when we apply our wash in the next step, those deep kind of hookups that grip the boot are going to work really well with our wash. So you can see where the exoskeleton runs up the side of the body here, supporting the leg, and then grips around the bottom of the calf there. And it's got a little hip joint right here. I'll go ahead and go on the other side. And look real close where this grip sort of comes around the back side of the leg here. Again, just flat color. And this color scheme, I made sure to choose colors that would coat easily so that I could paint the troopers faster. You know, it's always easier and less frustrating to paint with a color that'll coat in one brush stroke instead of, you know, those yellows and reds that can get really frustrating. Now, that's not saying this guy's not going to have red on him, because he is Russian, so he's going to have a few red markings, but I got some tricks for that too. And then we're going to do the little holster for the knife and that gray as well. We're going to do the handle in black. Just a preference. Alright, we got the lower body. Oh, no, we got to get this little belt here in the front. And then this armor here, as I bump the camera with my brush. Go ahead and paint the front and then stop kind of on the edge where these two pieces of clothing wrap around. This little armor plate, all part of that exoskeleton. These shoulder pads, shoulder armor. Down the back here, running down the arm, and then under the arm here. This guy. Helped him hold that minigun. On the other side, the pad. Gotta get the inside too. Next to his helmet. Gotta get that on the other side real quick. Yep, got it. Alright. Goes down the arm, then under the arm again. I'm just making sure we get a good solid color on there. We got his backpack here, the back armor with the backpack, so kind of squared off in this corner here. Maybe a little closer to his neck. Roll it up over the shoulder here. Alright, and then his helmet is the last thing that we're going to do with this gray here. The little breather mask on the front. Again, I'm not too worried. We're going to paint the lenses a different color, but if I get some gray paint on there, it is not going to matter one little bit. You can tell this is an older Series 7 because it's got the little bristles that are starting to fly away. Alright. Since we started from the base up, our feet are already dry and we're ready to move on. Noel, another very popular wash from the Citadel line. Noel, Nun Oil, however you want to say it. Alright, pop top on that. Again, we're going to be fairly heavy with our washes, so get here, get on the boot. Make sure you don't have to worry about the base. We're going to paint the base here in a little bit, so go ahead and Use the base as a way to get wash all the way onto the boot. And we're just washing all the areas that we painted gray. I got the handle of the knife there for a second. But again, it's not going to matter because we're going to go back. We're going to paint it black. Alright, let's get the front of the armor here. Watch all those nice details on this Ratnik Soldier's armor pop out. Yeah, let's go ahead and wash his hands here. His gloves. Down the back of the arm again. Hit this backpack. Try and trick my camera into focusing on what I'm doing instead of the palette in the background. Make sure I get my wash up and around the neck too, because I want those areas to be shaded and not get too bright. I'll go ahead and get his helmet here. All right. I realized I did miss his gloves, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, I'm going to paint those gray and wash those off camera. And then when everything's dry, we'll move on to the next step. Alright, I went ahead and painted his little gloves gray and then gave him a black wash. That's still a little bit wet, but we're going to focus on the lenses here on the soldier's helmet. So for that, we're going to start with the base color of our magic blue. And that's a little bit of extreme of a color, but even with realistic military guys, want to have some pops of color somewhere, just to make sure that the models get some attention, something to draw you in, and then appreciate all the little smaller details that are on the model. So I'm going to start with just a straight magic blue on my brush here, and then go in and hit these little goggle covers or lenses, protective eyewear. And you can paint these any color. It doesn't have to be a blue. You can do a yellow, you can do an orange, red. But I do recommend that if you're going to be painting your models in a military or more realistic fashion, that you still, maybe add just a little bit of fantasy. Make them pop, because, we're playing games after all. Let's make these guys stand out when we see them on the field, not blend in with all the terrain. So what I'm doing now is I'm mixing about 50-50 white and the magic blue. And we're just going to put a little bit of a highlight on the upper edge of this lens here. And again, it's a stark sort of divide here, but again, this is for tabletop. And then once we have that on there, we're just going to take our pure white, and then we're going to put a little dot here. A little bit of reflection. That way, see how that blue makes him stand out a little bit more? Now we have that. Let's move on. I already got black on the palette here. There's one area on the back that I wanted to do, and that's the handle of the knife here. Just going to go ahead and paint that black. And what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to dry brush this with a little bit of gray. So a little bit of reverse shading. The body of the gun here, let's go ahead and get that nice and blacked in. And then we're going to come back. We're going to do some other stuff to make this gun look cool. So just slop it on, get it on there quick. Get a little bit careful toward the piece interactions. The gun kind of hangs out there, so you can get a little bit faster with the application of our black here. Yeah, I'm not using any sort of really high detail brush, just my old Series 7s. New Series 7s is going to be easier to use. They're hold a really nice point. All right, we got that for the barrels here. These bars, let me go ahead. I'm going to hit these with black because it'll be a little more interesting to have these be just a tad darker. I'm not worried about getting that on the barrel. Just want to make sure I get that ring coated down in the cracks and crevices. Same thing here. So you can see how sloppy I'm being, and that is a good way to get it done quick. So what we'll do is we'll go back and we'll paint those barrels with aluminum or silver color, make them pop out a little bit more. But for the body of the gun, before we do that, what we want to do is we want to take some of our gray that we already have on our palette. And I'm going to take this, this is an Elf smudge brush. I make really good dry brushes. They have a lot of bristles. They have a thick sort of body to them, and they're short, so they got a nice resistance. Really good, and they're like $1. So I know you can buy all sorts of expensive brushes all day long, but for dry brushing, I wouldn't recommend spending a ton of money on brushes. So I'm going to take this here, and then when we're dry brushing, I take a paper towel, and you see how much paint came off there, and just sort of back and forth. You can do it quickly until you're seeing almost nothing come off the brush. And then go back to your model here, and we're going to lightly hit. You can see that even though there's no paint coming off on that paper towel, that dry brush is picking up all that gray, keeping it dark. And then here on the barrel, just kind of go back and forth real quick, hit the high edges of those little rings that are holding our barrels in place. And then even here on the back with a little handle, it can be real light. Give you a quick highlight on the handle there. And then when you're done with your dry brush, you just go to your paper towel. And to keep it from getting these really hard, kind of rough things that'll make your dry brushing streaky, I like to go in and just, kind of scrub until, the paint's kind of off, and I don't worry about getting it wet, because if I want to use it and it's wet, it's not going to work really well for a dry brush anymore. All right, let's grab a silver. That's actually going to be behind me. So, to get up to grab that. This is aluminum. So this is Model Air Color aluminum. I really like the silvers. I know if you've watched my channel, the aluminum or silvers or chrome or any of those colors, they coat amazingly well. So I'm going to just take that, go straight with my brush again, and let's start at the end of the gun barrel here. So you can see how easily this really bright silver goes on. Hold my breath a little bit, make sure I don't get get paint where I don't want it to go. Oh no. And I'm doing pretty heavy brush loads and then letting it fall into the cracks between the barrels. And just straightening out this line too, because we overpainted, but you see how easily that chrome color goes over the black even. And you can see how it likes to run a little bit, so it will follow the geometry of the model. So be careful if you don't want to, if you're painting something else and putting this color on it, it will try to run on you. So you might want to use a lighter brush load. And by brush load, I mean the amount of paint that you got on your brush. Again, not getting super crazy about the details, and then hitting everything with my paintbrush. Steady that for you. Couple more little areas that over on the black. Straighten those up just a little bit. Let's go ahead, let's make this little piece back here. We'll make this that little nice silvery chrome. Alright, cool. So we got our gun blocked in with color here. Now, these Russians, they do have red markings on them, so we'll focus on that next. I'm going to let this dry a little bit, and then we'll be back in a second. Alright, so we're back. We're a little more dry. I got my red. We're going to start with the heavy red from the game color line, Vallejo. Add just a little bit to that my palette. You don't need a whole bunch. And then we're going to follow up with a bloody red from Vallejo Air. Again, don't need a whole lot of that. So on our riot shield guy here, we have a little red stripe for insignia for our Russians. So I'm going to do the same thing on this guy. I'm going to take, and on our shoulder pad here, I'm just going to put a stripe from corner to corner. And then I can go back and I can even it up with a couple other brush strokes. And now we got a nice little red stripe there on the side. And then I'm going to go in, I'm going to hit the grenades too, because you know what, it's the future. Why not? We can have some red grenades. Kind of, lets us know that they're there. Breaks up the model just a little bit, not outside the realm of possibility. They could be green, and they probably would be in a camo sense, but it's fantasy. We're having a little bit of fun here. Alright, got our red on there, and see that gave us time for our red up top to dry. And we're going to take our brighter red, and what we're going to do is we're just going to get to the top of this stripe here, and drag out a little bit of a highlight. Just a little bit brighter red there. So now we can tell that's his unit or army or squad designation there, that little red stripe. Now on the grenades, we go and do the same thing, kind of hit the high points. One other thing I want to add is I'm going to take this chrome that we have on our palette already, I'm just going to hit the tops of these guys. Get it on the screen here. There we go. Now these models are 3D prints. They're prototypes. They're not the plastic finals that they will be. These were done on a Form 2. So print it up. All right. The barrels. I'm going to take our Noel, get it back out. Grab our liner, get it back out. And then we're going to hit these gun barrels. We're going to make sure we got some shadow down in here. And it's going to soften the transition between these little rails, or rings that hold all the barrels together. Pretty good brush loads on these. Can always siphon it back out by drying your brush off. And then this, I chose this shape down here because, you know, it's got some good texture, so the wash is going to do some good things with that little corkscrew motor, some part of the gun. All right, and I'm going to hit the grenades too. Just because the grenades don't need to be as bright as the insignia does. Alright. Alright, that's it for the soldier. But we need to base him. Now, I have these little square, flat bases. And for that, like we did on our riot shield guy, is we put him out in the middle of a road. We made some texture with paint. So I'm gonna grab my Winsor Newton size 4 here, a little bit bigger brush, a little bit rounder. This is an older one. Get it ready, get wet. I'm gonna take this black. I'm gonna mix up kind of a dark gray. G-R-A-Y. Instead of G-R-E-Y. Light gray. And real quickly get this dark gray going. This is going to be a little bit of a wet blend, so just a quick one. And, it's for basing, so. Trying to get that dirty asphalt, middle of the street. I hadn't been a street sweeper by in a little bit because guys are out there fighting in their giant robots and huge miniguns and stuff. Add a little bit more black here and then kind of stipple. Add some randomness to it. So now we got our base a little textured. Rinse that out. I'm going to take this dead white. We already got some on our palette. Take this dead white here. Let's make some street lines. So let's see, where's he standing? We're going to pull, and you always want to pull toward you when you're doing lines. See, I'm pulling straight down toward me. Makes it a lot easier to draw a straight line. Just reorient the model. Pull straight toward you. And then it's a little bit wider on the other model, so I'm going to make sure I get this just a little bit wider. Wider, not whiter. It's okay if it's a little bit rough. Again, it's a war-torn street. Now we're going to put some dashes in. Yeah, a little passing lane dashes. Those things are pretty long on the street. You don't realize how long they are, but you get out of the car and look at them. Pretty gigantic. Alright, got our lines on the road here. And then I'm going to grab some of this yellow and put it over that white. The reason I did the white first is it's just going to be a little bit easier to get that white on there. And so this is just clear yellow from the Reaper series, Master Series paints. And then they're going to be pretty heavy-handed. You can see there's a lot of paint on my brush. And I'm just going to go right over that. Alright, and then stop my camera from shaking. And key paint. There we go. We've got our street. And then I'm going to take my black here and sort of rough up my brush a little bit, push it, load it up, and just press it in the palette a little bit so I get this sort of separated look, and then carefully sort of touch into the paint stripes, make little chips of paint debris, you know, something knocked it off while I was rolling over it, like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some more of that kind of around, just to balance out how dark it is, and add a little bit more texture here and there. Alright, then we need some dirt. So we'll take this kind of tan, and again, you know, rough up our brush, push it into the thing. Again, this is old brush, so I'll do this with a new brush. A few little touches here and there. Rinse that out. Grab this earth shade. Load it up where I have my lighter dirt, and then go kind of around, add a few little rough. Try and keep it as random as possible. Put it over the yellow a little bit, you know, make it look a little bit dirty here and there. Maybe a little bit by his foot. Alright. Don't want to spend too much time on bases, but then again, yeah, make them look cool. Alright, we already got black on our palette. Go back, the old size 4. Series 7. I'm going to hit my edge. Just clean it up. I always do this on the models. So give it that nice clean look. You know, once you're done basing, you got all your dry brushing done. You're not going to hit that edge anymore. Go in, give that nice clean black edge. Alrighty. Now he is done except for one final step. And I'm going to let him dry for a minute before we apply it, because you can see some of these little pools are still kind of wet. But we're almost there. Almost ready to slam this guy down on the table and have him shoot. But we'll be back just a second and we'll do the last step. Alright, we are back. I got my Army Painter AntiShine. Now, this is the protective layer that we want to put on our models, especially since they're gaming models. We're going to be handling them. These acrylic paints are going to break down when the oils in our fingertips get on them from picking them up by the head and scooting them around the battlefield. So we want to make sure that we protect our hard work with a clear coat. So to spray this, again, let me clear my background a little bit and get the palette out of the way. So what I do, again, is I stay pretty close to the model. Start your spray beside the model, move quickly across. Your control is how fast you're moving across the model and how many times you move across the model. You don't want to start spraying on the model because you have no idea how much paint is going to come out and how quickly, and you don't want it to build up before you can move your hand away. So again, always give a test spray, make sure it's spraying good before you hit your model with it, and then quick little bursts around the model, seal in all that hard work. It's going to be a little bit shiny for a second while that's drying, but we'll take some pictures for you so you can have some nice close-ups to look at the end here. And that's it. You guys got any questions or comments, feel free to contact us and let us know. I'd be happy to help. I'm Clay Williams, and we will see you next time.